Something fundamental has shifted in Washington, and President Trump feels it deeply. Republican senators are no longer marching in lockstep. A war powers resolution aimed at reining in his ability to launch further military actions, especially after the Venezuela operation advanced through a key procedural vote, with several GOP members crossing the line. Trump has privately acknowledged he lacks the leverage to fully halt the momentum. This isn't a minor setback. It's a visible unraveling of authority behind the scenes. Frantic calls go out, tempers flare, and the White House scrambles. What began as routine pressure tactics now lands on deaf ears. This moment exposes a deeper reality. Trump's dominance over his party, once seemingly unbreakable, is eroding from within. Tonight, we examine the hidden dynamics, the panic in private conversations, the bipartisan defiance, and why this could signal the start of a profound realignment in American politics. The core issue is control. Trump has built his brand on projecting unyielding command over policy, over the party, over outcomes. But when senators from his own side vote to limit his commander-in-chief powers, even symbolically, it challenges that foundation. The resolution, triggered by the surprise capture of Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro in early January, seeks to require congressional approval for any sustained or escalated U.S. military involvement there. 5 Republicans joined Democrats to advance it, prompting Trump's public fury. He called them out, demanding they face electoral consequences, yet the pressure didn't fully work. Though the final measure was ultimately blocked 51-50, with VP Vance breaking the tie after 2 Republicans flipped back, the initial defiance was historic. It showed that fear of Trump no longer overrides self-preservation for some lawmakers facing tough midterms, thin margins, and shifting voter sentiment. Trump's threats of primaries or public shaming ring hollow when his endorsement increasingly feels like a liability. Rather than a shield, this tension exploded in a recent interview exchange where Trump refused to rule out aggressive options for acquiring Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory and NATO ally. He emphasized its strategic value for national security, countering Russia and China in the Arctic while dismissing Denmark's ability to defend it alone. "There's everything we can do about things like that," he said, echoing the Venezuela playbook. But when pressed on whether force was on the table, including potentially leaving NATO, he stayed ambiguous. "I'm not going to give up options." Imagine the scene: Trump, phone in hand, dialing senators who once jumped at his calls. Now, many let them go to voicemail. The quiet admission he can't fully stop the procedural momentum carries more weight than any rally chant. Because this isn't Democrats or the media eroding his power. It's his own party questioning whether endless military leverage serves America or just one man's instincts. The war powers push isn't isolated. It ties directly to Greenland, where Trump's rhetoric has sparked real-world reactions. European NATO members, France, Germany, others are deploying small contingents of troops to the island for joint exercises with Denmark. This isn't routine. It's a signal of unity against perceived U.S. overreach. Denmark's leaders emerged from White House meetings with Vance and Rubio, citing fundamental disagreement. Russia and China watch closely, seeing fractures they can exploit. Threatening a NATO ally risks activating Article 5 collective defense, turning U.S. actions into self-inflicted alliance collapse. Allies recoil because it undermines the post-we order America helped build. Trump's framing as national security necessity crumbles under scrutiny, especially given his past accommodations toward adversaries when convenient. Figures like Senator Rand Paul amplify the critique. In recent discussions, including on high-profile platforms, Paul dismantles the pretext for Venezuela action, regime change disguised as anti-drug operations. Why target Venezuelan infrastructure over Mexican cartels? Why treat foreign indictments as universal warrants? He highlights contradictions: pardons for drug-related figures in the U.S., yet bombing claims abroad framed as justice. This exposes moral flexibility. Laws and principles bend when useful for dominance. Paul's point lands hard. Force isn't about security. It's about leverage. And when Republicans hear a fellow conservative question endless interventions without losing standing, it normalizes opposition. No longer is dissent career suicide. It's a path to relevance in a party rethinking interventionism. This mindset believes domestically. Trump's vision relies on projecting strength through enemies. Foreign threats justify expanded enforcement, blurred accountability at agencies like ICE, fear as a governing tool. Without constant adversaries, the persona falters. That's why Greenland rhetoric persists, testing boundaries, measuring backlash, substituting spectacle for strategy, but the response differs this time. World leaders push back firmly. Within the GOP, silence turns to open acknowledgement. Calls don't carry weight. Pressure campaigns fizzle. Bipartisan coalitions override priorities. Restoring science funding. Trump sought to slash NSF down 57% in his request, but Congress held it near flat or slightly reduced cuts. NOAA and NASA protected from deep reductions. These votes send a message. Demands are optional. Power isn't just authority, it's expectation. When lawmakers stop fearing consequences, the structure shifts. Republicans now weigh survival over blind loyalty. Trump's brand of inevitability resistance is futile fades. Ideology reemerges, debates on restraint vs. dominance, congressional checks vs. executive freedom. Trump contributes little beyond theatrics. Electoral math accelerates this. Thin margins, looming midterms, polling showing his influence as a drag. Lawmakers choose independence. Trump's oscillation between rage and denial reveals the fear. Admitting conditional power means accepting decline. The Greenland push, Venezuela pretexts, budget rebuffs all converge. Trump reacts rather than directs. Institutions reassert. Congress rediscovers its role. Allies fortify positions. The party begins pondering life after him not as betrayal, but as necessity. This erosion is gradual, then sudden. Trump's greatest vulnerability? Assuming fear endures forever. As the Senate revolt lingers, as defiance spreads vote by vote, the question isn't if control slips, it's how far it's already gone, and whether the spell, once broken, can ever fully return. Stay focused. This is one of those rare moments in American history where the stakes feel almost surreal. A sealed judicial directive, now partially public after procedural steps forced it into view, has placed former President Donald Trump in an extraordinary position. The Supreme Court has issued a firm, no-nonsense order, produced specific materials that his team has long insisted don't exist or aren't relevant. The justices aren't asking politely, they're directing compliance with clear consequences outlined for refusal. This isn't casual suggestion or political theater. It's a direct command from the nation's highest court, backed by a majority of justices, including some who have historically leaned toward expansive executive protections. The order lays out a tight timeline for handover, warning that non-compliance could trigger enforcement by federal authorities, up to and including temporary detention until the materials surface. This isn't about fines or symbolic penalties, it's coercive, designed to compel action rather than punish after the fact. The materials in question tie back to long-running inquiries into events surrounding the transition of power in early 2021. Specifically, investigators seek communications, recordings, and related documents from a critical window in the days leading up to certification proceedings. These aren't ordinary files, they involve discussions with senior figures, including military officials, congressional members, and private individuals, about potential responses to electoral disputes. Evidence supporting the demand includes sworn statements from archival experts who discovered overlooked items during routine reviews of transferred White House materials. A standalone device, previously unlogged and found in mislabeled storage, reportedly holds conversations of major legal and historical importance. Forensic checks confirm the device works. The content is intact, and any prior claims of privilege don't hold when weighed against the need to protect core constitutional processes. Like peaceful power transfers, Trump's legal team has pushed back hard, arguing the items were never properly identified, that the device was faulty, or that executive protections apply. But the court, in detailed footnotes and reasoning, rejected those defenses. It emphasized that safeguards like privilege yield when there's credible indication of efforts to obstruct constitutional duties. This isn't a lower court opinion. It's the Supreme Court drawing a line. Supporting this are additional filings, including correspondence from government lawyers referencing in chamber sessions with all justices. Witnesses with firsthand knowledge reportedly testified under oath that Trump was aware of the materials, had reviewed them, and even expressed concern about their release in private settings. Corroborating details, metadata, logs, and other digital traces bolster the case, making denial harder to sustain. A key exhibit mentioned in these documents, a time-stamped image of the device in a familiar setting, aligning with records of movements and presences. This builds a chain of proof that's tough to dismiss outright. The timeline underscores the seriousness. Discovery happened months ago, followed by notifications, inquiries, grand jury involvement, subpoenas, appeals through lower courts, and now this apex-level directive. After exhaustive challenges and delays, the court has signaled patience is exhausted. Further roadblocks will face full enforcement tools. What could these materials reveal? While specifics remain sealed, the focus on pre-certification discussions suggests insights into contingency planning amid disputed results, conversations about authority, roles, and potential steps. If they contain explicit acknowledgments of limits or strategies, they could reshape public and legal understanding of that period. Audio evidence is particularly powerful. It doesn't rely on memory or interpretation. It stands as irrefutable. This demand extends beyond the recordings themselves, encompassing all related communications, notes, and references. Withholding the full category amplifies the standoff. Reports suggest some involved parties may have already shared summaries or cooperated, meaning investigators likely know the gist. What they need is the primary source for courtroom impact, something that can't be spun or discredited easily. This fits a recognizable pattern in high-profile cases: initial denials, prolonged fights over privilege and immunity, claims of bias, and resistance to handover. But when the Supreme Court speaks, appeals end. There's no higher venue. A conservative-leaning bench issuing this shows the issue transcends partisanship. It's about institutional integrity. If compliance doesn't happen within the specified window, enforcement could follow. Federal marshals handle such directives, potentially leading to detention until production. This isn't criminal arrest, but civil coercion still. The effect is profound. Legal teams will likely file last-ditch motions, but the court's language suggests limited room for more delays. The broader implications are massive. This tests whether any individual, regardless of past office or influence, stands above judicial mandates. It asks if the system can enforce accountability when the subject has vast resources to prolong fights. And it forces a national reckoning, one standard of law for all or exceptions for the powerful. If defiance persists, it could dominate discourse, compelling everyone, politicians, media, citizens, to choose sides on rule of law versus personal loyalty. That's a dangerous binary. Ultimately, this isn't solely about one person or one set of files. It's a stress test for the principle that no one is untouchable. The court's patience has limits, and we're nearing them. The coming days will show whether compliance prevails or if enforcement becomes reality. Either way, the precedent will shape how we view authority, accountability, and the endurance of democratic norms for years ahead. This moment demands attention. The outcome will reveal much about the country we are and the one we choose to be.